So, in the previous lesson that we had, we talked about the working capital. We also performed problem solving on the operating cycle and the cash conversion cycle, and determining how much would be the additional investment required if ever we prolonged our operating cycle, and what would be the benefit if we shorten our operating cycle. Then we also have the various techniques on how to reduce the operating cycles. And we also discussed about the working capital policies. We have the matching policy, relaxed, investment policy, restricted, and we also have the moderate. And we have the costs related to the investment in current assets. So now we will continue the first part on the working capital management. We have the cash and marketable securities management. So the cash and marketable securities management involves the maintenance of the appropriate level of cash and investment in marketable securities to meet the firm's cash requirements and to maximize income on idle funds. So idle means those funds that are not used. So we have to make them productive by making necessary investments. So why do we handle cash? Why do we need to manage properly our cash? First is for transaction purposes. So the firm maintains cash so that it can use it to conduct the ordinary business transactions. So cash balances are needed to meet the cash outflow requirements for operational or financial obligations. So that's for everyday use. It can also be because of the compensating balance requirements. What is a compensating balance? If you have deposits in the bank, usually the bank will require you for a compensating balance or a maintaining balance. If it is related to a loan requirement, the bank will require you to maintain a certain amount of money in your bank account, and that will serve as a security to the bank in case you're not able to pay your regular installments on the loan. So, paniguro sa bangko nga naa kay money sa bank, kay pwede man niya ma-charge dito katong mga installment. And then we have the precautionary reserves. So this is to handle unexpected problems or contingencies. So naakay pundo daan for any unexpected or mga emergency uh, uh, uses. Okay. And then we also have the potential investment security opportunities. So there should be available money so that if there are opportunities, pwede ka maka-invest or pwede ba kang maka-expand, you still have a enough money or naa ba ka spare money to be used para maka-expand ka, uh, gain ka og additional nga income. For example, you want to invest in equity securities or debt securities, or you want to invest in mutual funds. So naay paggamitan ang imuhang idle nga funds. And it could also be for speculation, that is to uh, in relation to the purchases that will be bought in the future. Especially, you have to consider that there are fluctuations in the exchange rates or in the interest rates. So that is for the purpose of speculation. So meanwhile, for the marketable securities, you handle them or you hold them because of substitute. So this can be used for as a substitute for the cash balances, or it could be a temporary investment or built up to meet known financial requirements such as tax payments or maturing bond issue and so on. And then we have the concept of float. Okay, so the float is the difference between the bank's balance and a firm's account and a balance that the firm shows in the books. Okay, so ang diferensya sa amount nga naa sa record sa bank ug sa record nga naa sa company. Okay, so nganong dili man sila magkaparehas nga na may difference because there are times when the entity already recorded a receipt but then wala pa siya na deposit sa bank. So, it could be a deposit in transit. Or ang bangko pod naa na siya gi-collect on behalf of the company, unya wala pa na aware si company nga naa day collection. So, naturally mas dako pa ang balance sa bank kay nakolekta naman niya. Pero sa book wala pa siya ma-record. Or pwede sad nga not deduction, na ay disbursement si company, nagama na niya ang cheque unya nakuha na ang balance sa iyahang cash per book sa iyahang records. Pero since wala pa man naabot or wala pa na abot sa ah, payee katong iyahang cheque, wala pa niya na-receive, wala pa niya na-pa-encash or pwede pod wala pa nimo na-release ang check. Ang mahitabo na niya is ang cash balance nimo sa books is much lesser kay na-deduct naman ang money, but sa bangko is intact pa imuhang kwarta. Okay? Or pwede sa na-deduction si bank sa imuhang account and then wala pa ka ma-aware, so ang imuhang balance per books mas dako pa kaysa per bank. So there are two types of float. We have the positive float and we have the negative float. So the positive float or a disbursement float occurs when the bank balance exceeds the book balance. Mas dako pa ang bank kaysa sa book. Such as when checks issued by the firm are already delivered to the supplier but the same have not yet been cleared by the bank. So this type of float should be increased. So nahitabuan ni is na nakag-issue nga check sa imong supplier pero pwede pod nga wala pa ni supplier na present sa bank for deposit or wala pa niya na withdraw. Uh, unya ang bangko of course kay wala pa man niya na process, so wala pa na deductionan ang imuhang account. So imong account sa bangko is intact pa. That's why mas dako pa si bank balance kaysa sa kay book balance. We also have a negative float. It occurs when the book balance exceeds the bank balance. So it shows that there is more cash tied up in the collection cycle. So this type of float should be decreased or if possible, eliminated. Okay? So this happens kung mas dako pa ang book balance kaysa sa bank balance. So this type of float daw should be decreased compared here nga ang bank balance exceeds the book balance. So, kani daw, kung ang book balance mas dako kaysa sa bank balance, so it means that may kwarta nga wala pa naabot sa bangko or na-tied up, wala pa nakolekta ang money, na-caught up pa siya dito sa collection cycle. Wala pa siya nato na fully collected. Okay? Kaya wala pa po siya naabot dito sa ato ang bangko. And in terms of the type of float, so mas better ang positive float wherein there is a disbursement float wherein the bank balance exceeds our book balance. And to manage our float, so that means to control the collection of disbursement of cash. So that is the float management. The objective is to speed up collections but reduce the lag between the time customers pay their bills and the time the cash becomes available. So its objective is to control payments and minimize the firm's costs associated with making payments. So, ang iyang goal is atong i-control ang payment. So, atong i-slow down. Kaya para nakapatay enough nga money, di ba? Money para magamit sa tuang operation. That's why in our previous lesson, di ba, I have mentioned to you that we need to stretch our payables because our money nga atong makolek sa atong operation, pwede pa man nato na siya mabalik para pa maka-earn pa ta. And unlike if we are going to pay immediately pero wala na discount, so ang atong kwarta dili na siya mutubo pa. So the total collection and disbursement times can be broken down into three parts. We have the mailing time, processing delay, and the availability delay. So the mailing time is the part wherein the checks are trapped in the postal system. So, sa katong traditional nga way, before, wherein payments are made in checks, so ipadala pa ang cheque in physical form. Unlike nowadays na naantay other options, pwede na siyang electronic fund transfer, pwede na siya bank to bank, pwede po tag remittance centers, pwede po siya GCash, so dili na kayo mo take og longer time ang pagpadala og bayad. But in the old nga times, so ipadala pa gyud ang physical nga checks. Then we have the processing delay. So this is the time that it takes the receiver of a check to process the payment and deposit it in a bank for collection. So ang pag-process sa checking nga mahimo na siyang actual nga deposit, mao na ato ang processing delay. And we have the availability delay. It is the time required to clear a check through the banking system. So when the bank receives a check, it does not automatically uh, deposits it to the account of the depositor. So kung mag-deposit man gud ka, for example, I receive a check payment from my customer. So what if it comes from a different bank? What the bank will do is kinahanglan pa niyang i-clear or mag-clearing pa ang cheque. So moagi pa ng verification, iscan pa na niya ang cheque, ipadala adtong centralized nga department for clearing of checks, and then store the information, and then moagi pa na siya mga 3 to 5 banking days for complete gyud nga validation, verification, and clearing. Okay? And due to this availability delay, pwede pa gyud nga ma-prolong before makuha na nato ang money. So in order to speed up collections, you have to reduce one or more of these components. Okay? And then example, assume that each day a company writes and receives checks totaling 100,000. If it takes 5 days for the checks to clear and be deducted from the company's account, and then only 4 days for the deposits to clear, what is the float? So 5 days to check, 5 days to clear and deducted, and then 4 days para ma-deposit. So, the float would be, ang iyahang difference would be 5, and then 4 days, there's 1 day difference. So, therefore, ang amount of float is equivalent to the 1 day nga delay or 1 day nga float, which is 100,000. Then, what would be the cash management strategy? So, first is you have to accelerate the cash collections. So, that would be reducing the negative float involved is the mailing and the processing. So, how would you do that? So, you bill customers promptly. Kinahanglan maningil gyud na on time. Forward or send our billing statements as soon as we can on a timely basis. Then we offer cash discounts to encourage our customers to pay on time. And you can use a lockbox system. In this type of system, the customers submit their payment to a mailbox controlled by a bank rather than to the company's offices. So bank personnel remove the envelopes from the mailbox and deposit the checks to the company's account immediately. So the remittance advices must then be transported to the company for entry into the accounts receivable system, and the bank generally charges a flat monthly fee for this service. So ma-automatic nga mga credits sa account ni customer. So, mas mapaspas ang imuhang collection. Next, you can also establish a local collection office. So, this will speed up the collection, especially in the traditional nga system or the old system wherein you have to send physical nga checks. And then, what if your customer is from Mindanao and your office in Manila? So, it will take time before you will receive the mail. So, if you have a local collection office in Mindanao, so pwedeng ma-deposit na largo dito sa imuhang account if ditso nila og bayad sa bangko. Or you have a local collection office na yung kay physical nga office or branch ba nimo wherein mao'y magkolekta sa payments. Ask customers to make direct payments to the firm's depository bank. So, pwede ra pod nga, you may tell your customers na pwedeng i-deposit largo para muritso na sa imong bank account. And you can also make use of the automatic fund transfer or electronic fund transfers. Then, second one is you control or slow down the disbursement by stretching the payables or maintaining zero balance accounts, playing the float, or less frequent payroll and schedule issuances of checks to suppliers. Then the third one is reduce the need for precautionary cash balance. So this will involve more accurate cash budgeting, have ready lines of credit, and invest the idle cash in highly liquid short-term investments. Okay, so the formula involved in the cash management is the optimal transaction size. So what is the optimal transaction size, or it's also called as the ECQ, economic conversion quantity? So this is the amount of marketable securities that must be converted to cash or vice versa, considering the conversion costs and opportunity costs involved. So the formula is we have 2 times the conversion cost times the annual demand for cash over the opportunity cost. Okay, so the conversion cost is the cost of converting the marketable securities to cash, and the opportunity cost is the cost of holding cash rather than the marketable securities. And usually this is a rate of interest. So this is in the form of percentage. Okay. And then next we have the receivables management. So the receivables management involves the formulation and administration of plans and policies related to the sales on account and ensuring the maintenance of receivables at a predetermined level and their collectability as planned. So in the accounts receivable management, we have to focus on the credit and the collection. So credit is on our policies relating to how we provide or how we allow our customers na mangutang. And the collection is on the policies related to sa pangolekta sa mga bayad sa tuang customers. So in terms of credit, we have two types of credit. We have the commercial credit or the trade credit, and we have the consumer or the retail credit. So the trade credit is firm to firm. Okay, so we have a firm extending credit to another firm. And when we say consumer or retail credit, it's firm to the customers. So kung ang naay large na company or dako nga company nagpautang sa another company, so that's a commercial credit. But if the company is extending utang to a customer and the customer is the final users of the products, dili na niya ibaligya, then that's a consumer or a retail credit. Then, in terms of our credit policy, so we have to take note of the credit standards, credit terms, credit collection policy, and delinquency and default. So, the credit policy is a set of guidelines for extending credit to customers. So, credit policy covers all these four variables. So, first is our credit standards. So, dapat naagid tayo standards or benchmark kung kinsa ato ang pautangon. So this is the minimum financial strength of acceptable credit customer and the amount variable to different customer. So in order to evaluate and measure the credit quality and customers' credit worthiness, so the following areas should be considered. So we have the 5 C's of credit. So what are the 5 C's of credit? First, we have the character, and then we have the second is capacity, and then the third one is capital, fourth one is collateral, and the fifth one is conditions. So the first one is character. So character refers to the probability that the customers will pay their debts or obligations. So, it's the customer's willingness to meet the credit obligations or the personal integrity of the borrower, which can be evaluated by his past business records. So, sa character means katong kinaiya mismo sa mong customer. So if na siya history nga dili na siya magbayad sa iyang mga utang, so of course unsa man ang ato ang buhaton, di ba? Dili na to pautangon. Kung daghan na ta og mga nahibaw-an nga balita about ana nga customer, so that would be one of our basis if ato na siyang pautangon or dili. Then we have the capacity. That's the judgment of the borrower or customer's ability to pay and his managerial ability, which can be determined by factors such as responsibility, maturity, and business competence of the borrower. It is also uh, known as the ability to meet the credit obligations out of the operating cash flows. So, ani nimo makita kung kaya bang mubayad sa imuhang borrower. So, asa man na siya nimo makita, so depende sa ang iyahang business, di ba? Naba siya business, nabay outflows, ay, I'm sorry, nabay cash flows sa iyang business, nabay kita iyahang business, maayo ba ang pagduma sa iyahang business or naa ba siya steady nga income? So, ana siya nimo makita sa or ana mauna siya ang gitawag nga capacity. So, kaya ba niyang mobayad sa iyahang utang based kung unsa ang naa siya, unsa man nga business ang naa siya, unsa man ang iyahang sources of income. So, apil na siya sa ato ang evaluate. Of course, we also have to check kung naa ba siya capital. That's the financial condition of a firm indicated by analysis of its financial statements. So you have to check if naa ba siya properties or other liquid assets. So makita nimo na siya sa FS. Naa ba siya available nga cash, naa ba siya mga properties, because you can get an idea what are the items or what are the properties that he may offer for letter D, for collateral. So not all of the items that you can see in the FS can be part of the collateral because the collateral is something that is offered by the customer. Pwede nga nakalista diha tanan niyang property pero dili na tanan ang iyahang i-offer as collateral. You have to agree with your customer what would be the collateral nga iyahang i-offer, and you can decide if you are going to accept that or not. Okay, so that would be used as security to obtain credit or asset pledge in case of default. Then we have letter E. This is beyond what is owned or what is possessed by the customer, because this refers to the general economic trends and special developments on geographic regions. So, for example, if in the certain nga place or area of the customer, so na ay nahitabo nga calamity, so most likely that would affect your decision kung pautangon ba nimo siya or di. Pwede nga pautangon nimo siya kay maluoy ka sa ilahang situation dito sa ilahang lugar, or pwede sad nga dili nimo pautangon because unsa man niya pagbayad kung naay calamity, what if ang yang source of income kay ang iyahang basakan unyan na nasira siya tanan tungod sa bagyo. So, pwede mahimo na nimuhang basihan ang conditions whether you're going to provide credit to that customer. Okay, so or you can also consider other geographic nga or other mga economic trends not related to weather conditions, 'di ba? So you can consider the income of the economy in their place. So kaya ba na siya makatabang para ma-sustain ang iyang business? So pwede na siya nimong ma-consider for that matter. And of course, you have to agree on the credit terms. Once you have um, agreed to accept that customer, imo siyang pautangon. So mag-agree mo sa credit period, sa discounts, and the discount period. And of course, there should be an appropriate policy for collections, especially on how to collect the past due accounts. And of course, you should also consider the delinquency and default. So what is delinquency and what is default? So delinquency, it means that you are behind on payments. So wala nakakabayad. So sa Bisaya pa, sa madungog na ako sa una sa maniningil is nakabuho. Okay, so naa kay palya sa imong bayad. So once you are delinquent for a certain period of time, usually 9 months for federal loans, your lender will declare the loan to be default. Pag consistent na gyud ang imuhang buho, so matawag na ka nga nag-default. Then, at this point, the entire loan balance will become due at the time. So, all of the balance will become due and demandable. Okay, so what are the costs associated with investment in accounts receivable? So, we have the credit analysis, accounting, and collection costs. Then we have the capital costs, of course, your investment in accounts receivable, and the delinquency and default cost. And as mentioned earlier, so we need also to have our collection policies. So how do we collect from our customers, especially if these are overdue? We need to send delinquency letter. So we need to inform our customer nga langlapas na siya sa iyahang due date. Or we can make a telephone call. Tawagan nato ato ang customer. Or we can also employ a collection agency natay suguon para maningil. Or we can take legal action against the customer. So at times, a firm may refuse to grant additional credit to customers until arrearages are cleared up. So katong mga past due niya, katong mga wala pa niya nabayaran nga nagtapunog na. So this may antagonize a normally good customer, which points to a potential conflict between the collections department and the sales department. So in probably the worst case, the customer files for bankruptcy. So when this happens, the credit granting firm is just another unsecured creditor. So the firm can simply wait or it can sell its receivable. So how do we accelerate the collection of receivables? How do we speed up? So we can shorten the credit terms. So sanang credit terms na to. So pwede nga ang atong credit period would be lesser. So pwede nga instead of 60 days, sahimo na tong 45 days or naman na mo na to 45, yung sunod na po 30 para lang mapaspas na ang pagbayad sa mga customer. Because as soon as we get our cash, na na po tayo magamit sa ato ang business for operation. And the longer do we wait for our cash to be collected, ma ma mas ma ano mataas ato ang operating cycle, and then mo alam pud kadako ang atong mga losses or mga opportunity forgone because of the longer operating cycle. Second is we can offer special discounts to customers who pay their accounts within a specified period. So this will encourage our customers to pay on time because na-benefit po sila ha kung mubayad po sila on a timely basis. And speed up the mailing time of payments from customers to the firm and minimize the float, and that is to reduce the time during which payments received by the firm remain uncollected funds. So in our next lesson, we will be discussing some of the problem solving, especially on the cash and accounts receivable management. So see you in our next lecture video.